It's a lot easier to give a talk when you can see people's faces and you're not just talking to a black screen. So if you feel comfortable, especially if there's any, younger people in the audience, you'd be doing me a favor by turning on your camera so I can see you. It's easier to communicate that way when we see each other. Thank you so much. So I'll give it one more minute and I'll start right at 6:35. So once again, if there's any kids out there, please let me see you. Okay. So first, I'd like to thank all the Bantes from Dharmapala Institute. I'd like to thank the chief Bante there, Bante Shanta, for giving me this invitation once again online. And I'd like to thank everyone, all the devotees of the Dharmapala Institute. I wish I could be there. I wish we could all be there. I'm sure we'd all like to have, these things in real person. I remember seeing everyone there. I really liked the place. When I'd stayed there for a couple of days, everyone was so nice to me. All the monks were so nice to me, and I felt like a prince being there. So I really feel nice, and I feel blessed to be invited back to give a talk here today. Anything I can do to help anyone in the Dharmapala Institute, whether monks or lay people, kids, anyone, it's a blessing for me because I've just received nothing but love from everyone there all the time, and more than that, more than I ever expected. So thank you so much. All right. So before I start the talk, I'd like to start off with paying our respect to the Buddha. Namo tase bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhase. Namo tase bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhase. Namo tase bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhase. Okay. So most of the time, I really don't plan Dhamma talks. I just like to see whatever inspires me in the moment, whatever comes out in the moment, to be very authentic. I don't like. Actually, I like what I say is I like to do Dhamma discussions. Dhamma discussions is a different dynamic than Dhamma talk, right? Dhamma talk, I sit here, you listen. It's very passive. So you can be on your phone, you can be eating, you can be doing anything, and I don't really know. Dhamma discussion, that means there's an engagement, right? There's a relationship. So maybe during the talk, I'll be asking some questions. You don't have to answer, right? They might be rhetorical questions, right? So you don't have to answer them, but it'd be nice, or you can just wave your hand. So I want some engagement. Engagement it helps with memory. So the more you invest into something, the more likely you are to retain it, right? So even by just moving your head and going like that in the screen, it helps you retain the information that you learn because you're engaging with the material. And if you ask questions or you have comments, that further level of engagement, that also helps you retain the material. So these things are very important keys, to successfully learning, because many of us, we've listened to so many Dhamma talks, we've read so many suttas, we've practiced Dhamma since, especially Sri Lankan people, since you were born, you've been practicing Dhamma, right? But sometimes, it seems like the things don't stick, right? Like you're trying to remember something. Oh, what was that again? Oh, yeah. And that's because sometimes we take a passive attitude towards the learning experience. So I invite everyone to engage, and that will help you retain the information. Okay, uh, so I think I'm going to talk about a very, very unique teaching of the Buddha, which I haven't, until modern times, I haven't really seen it anywhere. It's very unique to the Buddha. So during the time of the Buddha, there were two young men uh, who decided to leave their home. So these two young men lived very good lives, luxurious lives, but they were also very intelligent and very uh, good young men of good moral standing. And they decided to leave everything behind because they wanted to find out the truth, right? They wanted to see what was the truth. And they made a promise to each other. They made a pact. They said, okay, in order to find the truth, if we both head in different directions, it'll be, we'll be able to meet more people and cover more ground. So let's do that. But the promise is that as soon as you find the truth or someone who teaches the truth, one of us has to go look for the other one and bring them along, right? And that way we'll cover more ground and we'll help each other find the truth. So they both went on their separate ways looking for the truth, or for whoever taught the truth. So one day, one of these young men was just walking along the road and he saw this monk. And there was something about this monk, right? Something about the way he walked, his composure, something very serene about this monk. And this young man thought to himself, this person gets it. There's something about this monk. He knows something. I have to go figure it out. So he approached the monk and he said, Venerable sir, who is your teacher and what are his teachings? So this monk said, young man, I'm new in this teaching. I don't feel comfortable sharing something with you because I'm afraid that I might misrepresent the teacher and the teachings. So, I don't want to share anything. The young man said to him, Venerable sir, please don't worry. I won't hold it against you or your teacher if, whatever you say, if I don't get it, I don't get it. And I'll just leave it at that. I won't blame anyone. So then the monk said, okay. The monk said, for those things, from those things that arise due to causes and conditions, the Tathagata has taught their elimination, right? And how they arise. This is the teaching of the Mahasamana, the great wanderer, the great ascetic, the great, whatever we want to call it, the great monastic. So upon hearing this, the young man, something clicked in him. He's like, yes, this is it. This is it. This has to be the truth, right? He didn't get the whole thing, but he's like, this has to be the basis of the truth. He was so excited. He was so happy. He paid respects to the monk and he left and he went to go look for him. So I think most of you know this story, right? Especially some of you that have, been around for some time. So this is the story of Venerable Arahant Asaji. Venerable Arahant Asaji was that monk walking around. And that young boy is who we know as Venerable Arahant Sariputta, right? So this is the first interaction. So Sariputta was a very, very, very smart young man. He wasn't going to fall for anything. Actually, he had a previous teacher who had a lot of followers, but he didn't find the complete truth there. So he left his teacher. So after this, he went to go ask that teacher, hey, would you come and join me? I found, not only did he go look for his friend to tell him to come and join and follow the Buddha and the Buddhist monastics, but he went back to his teacher. He said, my teacher helped me a lot, so I want to share this with him. And he told them, teacher, I found a person who teaches the truth. Let's go learn. And his teacher said, you know what? Those people that want to learn the truth can go with you and go find the Buddha. But, there's always going to be foolish people around, and I'll take care of those people. So I'll stay here. So his teacher was kind of foolish. His teacher wasn't really interested in finding the truth. His teacher was interested in having a lot of followers, right? I think is a very interesting, line we can go down if I wanted to about how, fame and pride and egocentric tendencies, especially nowadays with, social media influencers and wanting followers and a lot of likes and a lot of comments and a lot of views. We can fall into this trap that this teacher, the former teacher of Upatissa, fell into, but that's not what I'm going to focus on today. Today, I want to focus on this teaching that Venerable Asaji Venerable Arahant Asaji gave to who will become Arahant Sariputta. You know, when we think about religion, we think about supernatural things. We think about devas, we think about heaven and hell, we think about magic, right? Psychic powers, spirits, all these, you know, miraculous things. Oh, we think about happiness, we think about pleasure. We think about like, oh, then I'm going to get all these good things somehow. That's what religion's about. It's about being really happy, getting to that ultimate happy state. And if we know the teachings of the Buddha, we know that the Buddha taught so many things, right? How many suttas are they? Thousands. Like, look at the Tipitaka. It's humongous, right? So much that Lord Buddha taught us, so many teachings. So then I was wondering to myself, out of all the things, you know, that have to do with religion, that we usually associate with religion, and out of all the particular teachings of the Sammasambuddha Gautama, you know, why would Venerable Asaji teach this, right? Why would he teach this? Out of all the things that arise due to causes and conditions, the Buddha taught those causes and conditions and their elimination. This doesn't really sound like a spiritual message, right? Like, it doesn't sound very religious. At least to us as modern people, right? It just sounds kind of matter of fact. So sometimes I think as modern people, we take for granted all the knowledge that humans have accumulated and we have been fortunate enough to have, right? We know so many things that our ancestors didn't know just because of the accumulation of knowledge. And some of these foundational facts or foundational knowledge that we have today is so important, but we grew up with it, so we take it for granted, right? Just like the people that we love, our parents care for us so much, our family members care for us so much, we take them for granted a lot of the time, right? Unfortunately, because they were always there, like, oh, my amma, she'll always be there, my achi, she'll always be there, they love me, right? They're kind of like, yeah, that's what we have. So these kind of knowledges that we have nowadays, this understanding of how the world works, we kind of take for granted too. What is this understanding that we have nowadays that Venerable Asaji, when asked, what is the teachings of the Buddha, right? What is the Dhamma? He shared this with them. This is what I like to call conditionality. Usually it's translated as cause and effect. Cause and effect, conditionality. So those things that arise due to causes and conditions, the Buddha taught those causes and conditions and how to remove them. Actually, when we look at the teachings of the Buddha's always has this underlying principle in all the teachings. If you want to understand how the Buddha presents his teachings, how he formulates the teachings, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, Paticca Samuppada, Panchakanda, like all these things are based on this understanding of conditionality. And then when I understood this, I was like, okay, now I know what Venerable Arahant Asaji was trying to do, right? Instead of giving him something, a little piece of the Dhamma, he was sharing with who was going to become Arahant Sariputta, the general principle, the general rule underlying all the teachings. If you understand this principle, then no matter whatever, any sutta or any Dhamma that you hear, you're able to understand it because now you have the proper foundation in which to, or the proper context in which to understand the teachings. Right? So we have to understand this. So then I was thinking to myself also, I was like, wow, you know, during the time of the Buddha, people had very strange ideas about how things happen. So in the Digha Nikaya, there's a sutta called the Brahmajala Sutta. It's like the first one, the net of Brahma. And then there are all the views, you know, all the possible views that people could have. So many different kinds of views, right? That there is no karma, that there is no causation, that things happen spontaneously without a reason, that things are completely deterministic. And you have, no matter what you do, things are just going to happen that way. And then these views are divided into many sub-views, how people get to that knowledge. In those days, and not too long ago, when it would rain, people would think, what? Oh, like God is making it rain, or the gods are making it rain. Or, from my knowledge, from what other monks have told me and people that I know from Sri Lanka, and in the past, when someone would get like all of a sudden they'd get a stroke or something unfortunate would happen to them, they would blame it on a yaka. Like, oh, some yaka attacked him and that's why he died. He got hit on the head by a yaka. That's why he got a heart attack. So why do I bring this up? Because the Buddha offered us a different kind of view, right? Instead of this kind of like random or deterministic or magical view of the world, the Buddha offers us a very, very pragmatic, concrete, logical, reasonable view of the world, right? That things arise due to causes and conditions, right? Not just randomly, not because of magic or some other thing. Everything has conditions. That's a powerful teaching, because if you think that things don't arise due to conditions, then you're pretty much helpless. You're a victim of life and of the world, and there's nothing you can do. But if you can understand that the world and things in the world in your life happen due to causes and conditions, and understanding those causes and conditions, you can learn to then manipulate them or change them or eliminate them or create new causes and conditions, which is a very empowering idea. Instead of being the victim of the gods or the world or some mystic force, now your life and the world is in your hands if you understand this principle. And when we actually look at the teachings of the Buddha, we can see this principle, especially in, when people ask you, what is Buddhism? Because we're in the West, right? And you interact with most people who are not Buddhists most of the time. Even when you look online and you talk about Buddhism, they talk about the Four Noble Truths, right? And we say, oh, there's suffering. The Buddha taught there's suffering, the cause of suffering, the end of suffering, and the path leading to the end of suffering, right? So there's dukkha, which is suffering, right? There is its cause, which is tanha. There is nirodha, which is the cessation, and magga, which is the path. So now, understanding what we learned from Venerable Arahant Assaji, we can look at this, right? We can look at this teaching and see, oh, wait a minute, here's the same thing, right? The Buddha understand that there's causes and conditions. So the cause for our suffering is tanha. And the elimination of those causes and conditions will result in the third noble truth, which is nirvana, nirodha, to be awakened. And the fourth noble truth is the way to get there, creating the causes and conditions to reach that liberation. So we see this general principle of conditionality or cause and effect in the Four Noble Truth itself, right? It's right there. It's not told to you directly, like Venerable Arahant Assaji, but we do see dukkha, its origin, nirodha, and how to get nirodha also. So we do have this teaching of causality right in the beginning. So then I was thinking, okay, let's go back to when the Buddha's under the Bodhi tree. Something very unique about the Buddha. Usually when we look, at other spiritual traditions, the founder of this spiritual tradition, at least on earth, for these traditions, they're messengers. They're communicating a message, right? Wherever they got it from, they're kind of like the medium, the middleman, and then they're sharing the message with everyone else. But that's not what happened with Buddha under the Bodhi tree, actually. The Buddha didn't get any message from anyone else, right? The Buddha, for himself, out of his own practice, out of his own understanding, out of his own discernment and knowledge and analysis, came to this realization experientially by himself, experiencing under the Bodhi tree. What did he experience? Well, he experienced 3 knowledges, right? Now it's time for the engagement part. Does anyone know what these 3 knowledges are? You can type them in the chat, or you can say or if you're too shy, just raise your hand so I know that you know it. Maybe that'll help. 3 knowledges under the Bodhi tree, right? Under that night, that beautiful night under the Bodhi tree. 3 knowledges. I'm sure some of you might know what they are. Okay, at least I got you. Maybe I got you to think at least. Okay, so maybe you're too shy to say anything, but you may have it in your head. That's good. First one, Buddha is able to see all his previous lives, right? So sometimes we think like, oh, like this knowledge is psychic power. That's what we call them abhinyas. Abhinya is like super knowledge, but sometimes they translate it as psychic power, like psychic powers, yeah. But I think sometimes we don't really understand why the Buddha, or what's the point of this understanding of seeing your past lives. It's not like for us that we're like, oh yes, I want to see my past lives because maybe I was like Cleopatra or Julius Caesar or Emperor Ashoka or some pharaoh in Egypt. That's not the reason, the Buddha saw his previous lives. I don't think you get much knowledge from that. But by the Bodhisattva under the Bodhi tree, seeing all his previous lives, what did he learn? He also learned this principle of causation, right? He saw one life, he saw his actions in that life, and he saw the results they gave in that life and in the next. Then he saw another life. He saw how he lived that life. He saw the results for that life, right? And he saw how he was reborn in the next life. So it wasn't that Buddha was just looking at all his lives because it was interesting. Like, oh, look, oh yeah, I was a king, I was a warrior, I was a peasant, I was a deer, I was a rabbit. Like, no, it's not just for entertainment purposes or just for curiosity. By seeing all his past lives, he was able to understand conditionality, cause and effect, how he got to the place that he is right now due to his previous actions. That's the important thing, right? That's the important thing. Then what's the next knowledge? The second knowledge under the Bodhi tree. The second knowledge under the Bodhi tree was that the Buddha, he gives an example, like a person walking into a room or through a door and coming out the other. He saw beings passing away and being reborn according to their actions, right? So he saw a being, he did this, he dies, and then he's reborn like this. Also here, he learns causes and conditions, conditionality, right? If this and this happens, then this will be the result. This will be the pala. This will be the vipaka. If you do these kind of karmas, right? Mental karma, verbal karma, and physical karma. Here again, we see the principle of cause and effect, causation, conditionality. And then the third one. The third knowledge was the removal of the asavas, the influxes, the influences, the things that obscure the mind, the taints. Remember what Venerable Asaji said, that the Buddha taught the elimination also, right? The removal of those causes and conditions too. There it is, the removal, right? The elimination of the asavas. He understood by looking at his own previous lives, looking how other beings are dying and being reborn according to their karma. He understood, okay, now I know what's happening. Now I know why people are wandering around in samsara because of doing, akusala karma, and because they don't know any better, misunderstanding, michaditi, or we can say avidya, not being aware of the teachings, right? But if you create the causes and conditions for the right actions in speech, body, and mind, and you practice the proper way, you can liberate yourself and be free from those influences. So here, my general point I'm trying to make with these three knowledges is that the general principle under these three knowledges is also conditionality, cause and effect. It's there. It's in the Four Noble Truths. It's under the Bodhi tree. It's in Paticca Samuppada. It's in everywhere. So in order to really understand the teachings of the Buddha, even when you're just listening to a Dhamma talk, maybe you're listening to a Dhamma talk about metta, karuna, mudita, about sila, about saddha, any Dhamma talk that you're listening to, you should have this general framework. The Buddha always teaches causes and conditions. I think that way we're able to better understand what the Buddha was actually trying to do and the context, the formula behind what the Buddha was trying to teach. Instead of just taking them like stories, we can understand the underlying principle behind the teachings of the Buddha. I could give you so many examples, of how causality is important. Like in the Noble Eightfold Path. Even the Noble Eightfold Path is based on this general principle of causes and conditions. First one is what? Samaditi, the right view. Right view is a condition. Without right view, there is no Dhamma, there is no Noble Eightfold Path. First, you need right view. That's why it's so important, especially for getting the first level of awakening, to be a Sotapanna. If you look at what you need to become a Sotapanna, you will see right away that samadhi is the most important thing to understand that. So samadhi, with samadhi, when you have the right understanding, the right view, the right perspective, the right knowledge, the right information, then guess what's going to happen? You're going to get the right sama sankappa, which is the right, I like to say, motivation or intention, right? Once you have the right understanding, then you know where to head. What's the direction you should go in. So the right view conditions the right thinking or motivation, and then the right motivation and thinking and right view condition right speech, because now you know, and now you have the motivation to use only skillful speech, kusala. And then you also have the understanding and motivation for right actions and right livelihood. So sometimes, you know, especially with people who are new to Buddhism, that's what I usually work with here at the temple. They're like, oh, Bante, keeping all the precepts is so hard. 5 precepts, it's so difficult. It's difficult to keep the precepts if you don't create the causes and conditions for keeping the precepts, right? If you don't have the proper view and the proper motivation, it's difficult to keep the right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Why is that? Because if you're just following the precepts without having the previous 2 steps, samadhi and samasankappa, then the precepts become like rules or mandates, like something someone's forcing upon you, like something that you have to do against your own will. Like, I don't want to do these things, but because I'm Buddhist or I want to practice Buddhism, I'm going to follow the 5 precepts. It's not really genuine. The right motivation is not there. That's why it's hard to follow the precepts. You may be wondering, oh, it's so hard for me not to gossip. It's so hard for me not to do drugs and alcohol and these things. That's because the two previous steps are not completely fulfilled. If you fulfill the previous 2 steps, then the next steps, the behavioral ones, the sila ones, are easy to follow. But if not, they're always going to feel like something that's being imposed upon you, like a commandment, like something you should do. If you're a good Buddhist, you should do the 5 precepts. And that's why I do them, because I want to appear as a good Buddhist. I want to think of myself as a good Buddhist. But if you create the previous good causes and conditions, which is samasankappa, which is renunciation, nekama, avyapada, avihimsa, we can say generosity or giving. We can say metta, loving kindness, and compassion, to talk about it in a positive way. Because if we say avyapada, non-anger, avihimsa, non-cruelty, it's kind of too abstract. So we can say loving kindness and compassion, the opposite of those. If your mind is filled with renunciation, if your mind is filled with metta, if your mind is filled with karuna, you will not hurt any living beings. You will not steal. You will not commit sexual misconduct. You will not lie. You will not go around with gossip or saying harsh words, and you won't do any drugs to intoxicate your mind. If you create those causes and conditions, that right thinking, that sama sankappa, the sila is so easy to do. It's natural. It just comes out of you. You don't even think about keeping the precepts because your mind is so full of nekama, metta, and karuna that's just your normal way of being, right? So if we find ourselves, in the West, especially, it's so tempting to do alcohol and smoke cigarettes. It's so tempting. I'm going to be honest. You go to work, people gather after work, people want to drink or smoke, right? In California, maybe people don't smoke cigarettes like in Europe, but in California, people smoke marijuana. It's very acceptable. If you go to family gatherings, I see on Facebook, I don't want to say, but I see many Buddhist people sharing parties where they're drinking on Facebook Live and stuff like that. And it's not to blame anyone. It's just to say, if you're having problems keeping the precepts, you have to understand the causes and conditions for keeping the precepts. So you have to cultivate those causes and conditions for keeping the precepts in order to keep them. If you don't cultivate those conditions, it's going to be hard. You're not going to be able to do it. So why do I bring this up? Because I want you to understand how to bring this abstract idea of cause and condition and conditionality that the Buddha learned, that Venerable Arahant Asaji shared with Sariputta, to your everyday life. Because for most of you, what we need to engage Dhamma in real life, where the rubber meets the road. We need to share Dhamma in such a way where you can apply it to your everyday life. I can talk about very deep, topics about Paticca and all the different Cetasikas and the Abhidhamma, but how is that going to pay out for you? How are you going to cash that in the next time someone cuts you off in traffic? These very abstract ideas. How is that going to help you when, I don't know, one of your family member dies? they pass away. How is that going to help you when something bad happens to you? It's very difficult to get these abstract ideas to provide something for you in a very difficult time. So I'm hoping that this idea, this very abstract idea about conditionality, about cause and effect, you can apply it to your behavior, to your sila, right? If you're having any problems with your sila or your Buddhist practice, anything, you have to understand, I need to create the causes and conditions that are going to help me with my sila. One of the best things is kalyanamitas. That's a super important condition for living a good Buddhist life. Because the Buddha told Arahant, he told Ananda at that time, Venerable Ananda, that the spiritual path, the practicing the Dhamma, is not possible without kalyanamitas, right? So kalyanamitas are a condition. They're a cause, they're a condition for living the spiritual life. So if you want to have sila, you need to have kalyanamitas. What does this mean? This means that we shouldn't associate with fools and only associate with the wise, right? That's also a cause and condition, right? Asevana che bala nam pandita nan che sevana, right? We know this. Mahamangala Sutta. Associating with foolish people are causes and conditions for you to break the precepts and not keep them. Associating with the wise people, the panditas, the kalyanamitas, are causes and conditions for you to keep the precepts and for you to develop your practice. So, you have to create the proper causes and conditions. That means we have to be very aware of who we hang out with, right? At parties, at company meetings, at sports events, at clubs, wherever we go, we have to be very aware, because those people are also causes and conditions for our own behavior. And we have to be aware of the situations that we put ourselves in. Yes, if we go to a cocktail party, it's going to be very hard not to drink. It's called the cocktail party for a reason, right? It's very hard. You have to be aware of these kind of things, right? If you go to a 4th of July party, you probably know that there's going to be some drinking there too, right? So we have to be aware of all these things in order if we want to live a successful path with Dhamma. So this is just me, giving you some examples. I'm not trying to preach to you. I'm just trying to share how you can apply this cause and condition, this understanding of causes and conditions to your everyday life. It's very important. It's very, very, very important that you understand that you have the capability to understand. You have the capability to make your life a better life through understanding, through creating kusala, good, wholesome causes and conditions, and by eliminating unwholesome causes and conditions. It's very important. I find this teaching very empowering, right? Now with this understanding, I can see the world this way, and I can manage, right? I can interfere. I can cultivate things that will help me reach my goals, instead of having this passive, like, oh, well, things are just going to happen. Oh, Bhante, this is my karma from my previous life. And maybe hopefully in the future, I'll be born during the time of the next Buddha, Maitreya Buddha, and then I'll become awakened. No. You have the understanding. I believe in you. You have the panya. You are all panditas. You're very smart people. Right? Now that you know this principle, please try to apply it in your life. You can become the owner of your life. There's a sutta called the Vitakka Santana Sutta. And the Buddha gives, right here at the end, he says, one who does this becomes a master of the mind. They think what they want to think, and they don't think what they don't want to think. So in this sutta, the Buddha is telling us that we can be masters of our own life. If you're a master of your mind, you're a master of your destiny. You're a master of the world. Because the Dhammapada says, right? Everything comes from the mind. Mano puppangam madhamma manosetta manomaya. And the mind is conditioned also. Wholesome states, kusala and akusala, arise due to causes and conditions. It's a very powerful message here. Very, very powerful. So I want to kind of leave it open for Q&A, questions, comments, concerns. Maybe I can clarify some of the things that I said. I know I'm kind of going all over the place, and I was talking really fast. I'm sorry about talking that fast. But yes, now if you want to share anything, if you want to say anything, now's the time. So everyone here is like Sariputta, right? You all became Sotapannas now? That's what happened. That's why there's no questions. Everyone's a Sotapanna now. I accomplished my job, my mission in this life. That's what happened to Venerable Arahant Sariputta. At that time, when he listened to Asaji, he became a Sotapanna.
Bhante, maybe I'll ask.
Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I heard, in the text, I haven't read it, but from Dhamma talks, that Buddha could predict what will happen to certain people. They're going to either die or whatever, become enlightened and so on. Is that correct?
So let's bring it back to what we learned today, right? Causes and conditions, right?
Right.
So if you see a string of dominoes and you see, the first one's falling, you can predict that if it keeps going, if it keeps happening, the dominoes that are coming up later are also going to fall down too, right? You can make that inference. Even though it hasn't happened, all the dominoes are standing lined up. And if you push the first one and you see the second one fall, you can make an inference that the last one will also fall. It hasn't happened yet, but it's a logical deduction, right? It's reasonable to think that. So the Buddha, yes?
In my understanding, it's multiple causes and conditions. It's not one-to-one, right?
Yeah, this is just an example. This is just like an example to make it easy to understand. I don't want to add too many variables. Then it gets confusing for people. The more variables we add to the equation. This is just like a simple way to formulate the thing. So what the Buddha could do is that he could see how this person was thinking, speaking, and acting. And the Buddha knew if this person continues with these kind of karmas, they will end up in this kind of place. Right? Because of his understanding, he saw all his previous actions. He knew how things worked out, and he saw how beings died and arose due to their karma. So the Buddha was the one who had that special knowledge, that jnana, to see someone just by looking at you and seeing the way that you're thinking, talking, and speaking. Okay, if this person keeps doing this, they're going to end up there. It's like if someone's walking straight down the street, you'll think if that person keeps walking straight, they're going to get to the end of the street. The person might turn. They could go to the left or to the right, but if they keep going straight, they're going to get to the end of the street. So the Buddha would know this. If this person keeps going this way in their life, they're going to go to hell. If they keep going this way, they're going to go to heaven. But the Buddha wasn't telling them their fate. Like, no matter what you do, you're going to go to hell. That's not what the Buddha was doing.
Right.
He was telling people this to empower them. Look, I'm warning you of the danger. If you keep walking, you're going to fall off the cliff. Come back, turn to the side. Don't go off the cliff. Right? That's what the Buddha was doing.
Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah. Anyone else? So many people here. Or you can put it in the chat if you're shy. You can always put something in the chat. During the time of the Buddha, if you read the suttas, you'll see many occasions when the Buddha would tell the assembly, everyone who's there, monks, nuns, devas, nagas, regular upasikas, everyone who's there, he would tell them, ask a question. If not, you'll regret it later. And everyone would stay quiet. They wouldn't ask a question. And as soon as they would leave, guess what would happen? They would ask a question to another monk. And then the monk would say, didn't you hear what the Lord said? The Buddha said, if you have questions, please ask. Why are you asking me now? You had the opportunity, you should ask. And then the monk would be like, please, Bhante, I really want to know. And then the monk would say, okay, I'm going to teach you according to my understanding, but you should ask the Buddha. So here, what I'm trying to say is that even the Buddha taught us, if we have questions, we should ask, and we shouldn't hold back. Okay, here we go in the chat. When someone gets very seriously ill, how do you condition the mind? How do we understand the cause? So people get sick due to causes and conditions, right? So you can get sick because of bacterial infection. You can get sick because of virus. You can get sick. You can get an injury, right? Because you fell or you tripped, or maybe you got in a car accident. There's so many causes and conditions for illnesses, right? So yes, when we're sick, it's a little bit more challenging to properly condition the mind because the pain, the suffering, the dukkha is so apparent. It's so overwhelming, but that doesn't mean we cannot do it. And my approach to dealing with difficult situations is to do a lot of preventative work. So if you know anything about healthcare, you know that the best medicine is to live a healthy life. That's the best medicine, right? Then you don't have to go to the doctor. You don't have to like take medicines. You don't need surgery if you do the preventative work. So in a similar way, if every day we cultivate our mind, if every day we practice, we develop, we do bhavana, right? If every day we practice bhavana, when the time comes when we are sick, our mind is already inclining towards those wholesome states. And it's easier to create the causes and conditions to have a more calm mind, a more skillful mind. But if you don't really practice and then you're already in this difficult pain, it's so hard. I'm going to be honest. If you have very serious cancer or something and you don't have enough, it's going to be, or you just cut off your leg, like it's going to be hard because it's so obvious, right? It's so painful, it's so strong. We need to do preventative work the same way that we know that preventative work is so important for our physical health. It's the same thing for our mental health, right? That's why in the nowadays they talk about self-care. What does self-care mean? Preventative mental training or mental health. That's what it means. Take a self-care day. Do this for self-care. It means to train your mind, to cultivate your mind. So when something does happen, you're ready for it. So my advice for any difficult situation is don't wait. Don't be late. Appamada. Don't be late. Now is the time to practice, to train the mind. So when something difficult does happen, you're ready. You're ready for it. You're like Batman with his utility belt, and you can pull out all these different gadgets that you can use. But please do not be late, the Buddha said, right? Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the last words, the Buddha said, do not delay, do not be late, or you'll regret it in the future when pain comes, when the dukkha comes. So my advice would just be right now, from today, start training your mind. That way, when these situations do happen, you're prepared. If you have time, Bante, Dita Dhamma Vidanai. The view of Dhamma. Yeah, I'd have to look into that to explain it in detail. Okay, there's a hand up. Vunal.
Hello, I'm Vunal. Thank you for the discussion. So I have a question. I always give myself really high expectations, and sometimes I don't really meet those expectations. So how do I condition my mind so that I don't get sad when I don't meet expectations?
Very good questions, young man. And do you like planes? Because I see that plane right there as your picture.
Yeah, I really like planes.
Oh, so do I. I was in the Air Force for 12 years.
Oh, today we went to an air show. So that was pretty cool. I got to see those planes.
When did you go to the air show?
Today,
today. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Was it like a military air show or a civilian air show?
It was a military air show.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. Yeah, I love them. I wasn't able to go to many air shows, but my job was on the flight line. So every day I saw a bunch of planes take off and land all the time. And when I would hear a plane, to me, it was just all I heard was work. Now you got to work. When a plane lands, that means work to me. So I didn't have this very positive outlook on planes all the time. I just saw them as more work. Anyways, yeah, your question. So you have high expectations of yourself, which is good, right? Which is good. But when you don't meet them, then you might feel a little bit bad. So you have what I would say a good motivation. You have a good intention, right? You have very good intentions that you want to do the best that you can. That's great, right? But we also have to have an understanding that no matter how good our intentions are, right? We are of limited capacity at certain times, or limited capabilities, or there's limited means, right? So although we try very hard, we may not get the results that we expect all the time because of other things that are happening. right? You might try very hard, but that day you got sick, or that day you woke up late, or that day you had a tummy ache, or something else happened. So there's always all these different causes and conditions that can interrupt our good motivations, our good actions, our good intentions. That is out of our control. So one of the very important things that we have to realize that the Buddha taught is that a lot of things are out of control, like this body, right? You can't tell it not to grow. Vimul, you can't stay short, like you can't stay your height, whatever height you are, forever. The body's going to grow whether you like it or not. You're going to get old whether you like it or not. There's certain things that happen that we can't really do anything about. So even though we have good intentions and we try our best, there's going to be other things that are going to be limiting us. And once we have this understanding that, yes, I can try my best, but it might not always work out the way that I planned it, because there's so many other things that can interfere. Once you understand that and you accept it, it's easier to deal with it. But if you don't understand, if you think that the result is 100% because of you, so something happens bad, you're going to think it's because I did something bad, because I'm bad, or I wasn't good enough. But no, there's so many things that limit us. There's so many things that can interfere with our success. You could study super hard, but maybe someone studied a little bit harder than you. So then they're the number one in the class and you get number two. That doesn't mean that you're a worse person or you didn't study well. That just means the other person did a little bit more. You're still a good student. Everything that you did was great. Just someone did a little bit more than you, right? So there's so many things, but I think that what I'm trying to tell you is that we also have to understand that whatever happens in this life is not 100% under our control. That means that we don't take 100% of the blame for it, right? So whatever happens, you don't meet the expectations, you can think, okay, I did my best. I feel great. No matter what happens, I know that I did my best, and what was under my control, I did it to my best of my ability. And that's enough to make you happy, right? So that's my advice to you, Vanul, that you did your best, and you knowing that you did your best, that should be the reward, because you have no doubts. I think that's the what I can offer you at this time.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Can you please advise how best to do bhavana for someone who is busy with daily? Oh, this is great. So we can do bhavana anytime. The Buddha says in many places, like in the Satipatthana Sutta, whether standing, sitting, walking, or laying down, chewing, he even says when defecating and urinating, you can practice. Many people think that when the Buddha says standing, sitting, laying down, and walking, but meditation, he means that you just stand there and you meditate. You just sit there and you meditate. You walk and you meditate. You lay down and you meditate. That's not what the Buddha is saying. What the Buddha is saying is that no matter what position you find yourself in, you can practice. Right? That's what the Buddha is saying. That's why he gives the examples of while stretching out, while grabbing your robe to the monks, while grabbing your bowl, while chewing, while going to the bathroom. He's telling you any time of the day is a time that you can practice. So I'll give an example of my lay life. When I was on the bus, I would practice loving kindness meditation towards everyone on the bus. May everyone be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. On the bus. When I used to go to the gym and I was lifting weights, also, may all beings be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. When you're folding clothes, may all beings be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. When you're washing dishes, you can practice metta. Metta is such an awesome thing. And also sati, you can do all the time. You can do all the time. It doesn't interfere with anything. I've never found that metta interferes with something that I'm doing. Maybe if I'm trying to do like some mathematics, maybe that would be a time where it's a little bit more difficult to practice metta because you got like these two competing things in your mind. But any other time, I mean, if you're doing office work and especially if you're doing like customer service and you're working with people, I would 100%, recommend practicing metta. So metta is such a powerful practice. If you practice metta, it'll turn into karuna, it'll turn into mudita, it'll turn into upekkha. And once you get to the upekkha level of the Brahma Viharas, then you can watch impermanence, the perception of impermanence, anicca sanya. And if you reach anicca sanya, you can become awakened. You can become an arahant by properly understanding anicca sanya. So even through loving kindness, we can, indirectly reach awakening. We do still have to come to upekkha and see impermanence, which is anicca sanya. but metta is a powerful practice, and it's a practice that's available to us all the time, no matter what we're doing. So my recommendation would be to practice loving kindness meditation. I mean, for me, that's been a very powerful practice that you can do any of the time. So hopefully that helps you out. Yes, it just says Zoom user, but go ahead.
Yeah, so the question I have is it's relatable to one of the things that you mentioned, that that many in California probably are not consumers of alcohol and cigarettes, but they could be marijuana users.
Mm-hmm.
So I could relate to that category, and it's I'm just being honest, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So the orthodox teachings in Buddhism, if you look at it from the scope of orthodox teachings in Buddhism, like one would think that it could be something that, you know, categorized as something bad. But as long as you have like balance in life in terms of how you perceive things, and like how you think, how you see life in a way that basically that you do not go to this pace where you feel I mean pain and all the suffering, right? Like how does that affect I mean it's basically someone may do it for some for recreational or you know, recreational purpose, more of something you know, to get high, or you know, to just like to get rid of the pain and all this suffering you have. So my question is, if you define that activity from an unorthodox interpretation of Buddhism, not related to all these boundaries and conditions, what do you have to say about it?
You know, it's difficult to say anything like from a non-orthodox position, because as a Buddhist monk, that would require me to kind of like, it would require me to think that I know something that the Buddha doesn't know, or somehow imply that the Buddha's wrong. So that's difficult, you know, because, you know, according to the orthodox position, here we go again, Buddha knows everything, right? He's supremely wise. So if we were delusional, right, we're covered in ignorance and craving and hatred, for us to kind of, you know, come up with some truth is very difficult, because we're kind of like, we're blinded. We don't see the whole picture. So maybe it does appear good to us, but maybe, you know, at the end, it doesn't turn out to be completely good, or there's something that we're not taking into consideration. So, you know, what I would say, you know, for people who feel that life is very difficult and then this is a way for them to deal with life, I would say, you know, it's one of many coping strategies that you can use. So there's so many coping strategies that we can use in life to deal with things. We can use dancing, we can use singing, you know, people use eating, like people use many art. Like there's so many ways that we can cope with difficulties in our life. And maybe for some people, their way to do it is with marijuana. But for people, marijuana, alcohol, whatever, any kind of drug, you know, my plea to them would be, there's so many other strategies that we can use. There's so many other coping mechanisms to help you, especially nowadays. So many tools are available. So my advice or my suggestion would be, or my plea would be to ask these kind of people, like, please, you know, there's so many other things that are available that you can use. Because remember, in Buddhism, the highest level is what we call vimutti or visuddhi, which means purity of the mind, right? Or liberation of the mind. And so we don't want to add things that are going to cloud the mind, delude the mind, or add more things to the mind, make it difficult where we're not seeing things clearly. So I would never blame someone for trying to, you know, find a way to deal with difficult situations, because maybe for some people that's all that's available or that's all they know. But if there is other ways that you can do it, then I would highly suggest that, you know, we try to use other options instead of, you know, drugs, because I haven't seen the FDA say like, oh, we recommend that everyone has 1 smoke of marijuana per day to be healthy. Like I haven't seen the FDA come up with that. So I don't think even, you know, any level of smoke is not healthy for us, because humans didn't evolve to breathe in smoke, right? Like that's not a human thing to do. So, you know, just kind of these are some general ideas.
Thank you.
I think we should be wrapping it up, because I got a Dhamma school that I teach for kids in a couple minutes. So first, finally, I'd like to thank everyone for having me here. I'd like to thank all the Bhantes from Dharmapala Institute. Thank you so much. I wish I could spend more time. I wish I can go up there and be with all of you. I do have a YouTube channel. It's called Sanathavihari Bhikkhu, or you can also Los Angeles Sanathavihari. You can find me very easily if you want to find my YouTube channel. Also in Facebook, I post things all the time, and a lot of videos me working with kids and different groups. So just put in Sanathavihari Bhikkhu or Los Angeles Sanathavihari, and you can find me on Google. So thank you so much, Bhantes. Thank you so much to everyone here, and I hope to see you again in the near future. And may you be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. Sukhi Hotu.
Now I'm going to comment about the Dhamma talk, but all of this, I would say thank you, Venerable Sir. From the power of the Buddha and Dhamma and Sangha, may Venerable Sanathavihari experience good health and longevity too. With that thought, we all say sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. ශ්‍රද්ධාවන්ත පින්වත්නි, අපි මේ අවස්ථාවේදී තාමත් ශ්‍රද්ධාවෙන් යුක්තව මේ උතුම් ධර්මානුශාසනාවන් ශ්‍රවණය කරන්නට යෙදුණා. මේ ධර්මානුශාසනාවන් ශ්‍රවණය කිරීමේ අද දවසේදී දායකත්වයේ බාර දුන් කටයුතු කරන්නට යෙදුනේ යමුනා සත්‍යවාදී මෑණියන් වහන්සේ සහ ඒ වගේම නැති සත්‍යවාදී දෙපළේ පිරිස පවුලේ උදවිය අපි මේ රැස් කරගත් උතුම් පුණ්‍ය ශක්තිය ආශිර්වාදයෙන් මූලිකව දෙවි දේවතාවුන්ට අනුමෝදන් කරමු. අනුමෝදන් වේවා. දෙවියෝ මේකින් ලබාගෙන දිවිසුරු වර්ධනය කර ගනිත්වා. විශේෂයෙන් අපි සිද්ධ කළ මේ උතුම් පුණ්‍ය ශක්තිය ආශිර්වාදයෙන් දෙවියන්ගේ දේවතා ආශිර්වාදයෙන් යමුනා මහත්මිය ඇතුළු ඒ පවුලේ පින්වත් පිරිස බලා